So Lucy Hashizume was my maiden name. I am, what am I now? 71. I'll be 72 in July. I was born on July 14th, which I always thought was Flag Day, but it's actually Bastille Day. So it kind of makes a little...
July 14th?
July 14, 1946. So I will be 72 in a few months. I was born in Waipahu in, I think it was a clinic at that point, because it wasn't a hospital. And I think it was not that far from where Ota Camp was. And spent the first 5 years in this two-story wooden building with a hole on the second floor that we could spy on people downstairs. It had no indoor plumbing, so no bathroom. Bathroom was an outhouse. You had to go at night. If you had to go at night, you had to go out the back door, the kitchen door, go down this dark, spooky trail, and go to an outhouse. So baths were in this big old tin. But when I was 5 and a half, in the middle of my kindergarten year, my dad completed a house in Wahiawa. So we moved in the middle of my kindergarten year. Took me away from a kindergarten teacher that I just loved.
You know her name?
No, but plunked me into this kindergarten class at Wahiawa Elementary with, I don't know her name. I remember her as being like this battle axe. And she was like, no sympathy. I didn't want to be there anyway because I wanted to be in Waipahu. And I just remember one day she was, they had tomato juice. You know how they have snacks and they had tomato juice, and I could not stand the taste. And she said, you have to drink it. And I said, I don't like it. I don't like it. She made me drink it. So I drank it and I threw it up on her.
On her?
I mean, not on purpose. It just turned my stomach and I just threw up. She never made me eat or drink anything again. But, I mean, that was my intro to Wahiawa. So I grew up there from 5 and a half. Went to Wahiawa Elementary, went to, the schools were full. So 6th grade was down at the Honganji, the church. They had classrooms. So 6th grade was there. And high school was Lelehua High School. From 7th grade. At that time, I think it was the last class that did that, because now it's like, what, 9 to 12 or 10 to 12. Yeah. So I graduated from Lelehua in 1964, and I was accepted at UH, but I didn't really want to go to college. I didn't feel I was ready to go to college, but I had always been on the college track. You know how they track you in high school? And so I couldn't not go, so I went and got out of going because I flunked out. And some people said, oh, that was so bad. You know, I said, no, that was really good, because then I couldn't go to college, right? I had to tell my parents, I can't go, they kick me out. So then I was looking for something else to do, because I really didn't want to go to school. I wasn't ready for it. So I saw this ad for VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. And of course I'd been reading different books. I had read a Zane Grey book, and I still remember the title, Under the Tonto Rim. And was this school teacher who had gone to this reservation and was, you know, helping people. And I thought, oh, maybe I can do that, right? Because Peace Corps was in existence at that time, which was 65, I think. And you needed college degree to go Peace Corps. So I said, why can't I do that? So then I thought, well, maybe I can, yeah, in any case, I should try to do something for this country first. You know, you should try and help clean up your own neighborhood instead of going to a foreign country and say, oh, you don't teach your kids right, or you don't do this, or you don't do that. So I figured, why not do it here? So I applied, got accepted, and so at the age of 19, flew by myself to some airport in West Virginia or somewhere. Yeah, and then I had to rent a car, meet up with some other volunteers, and drive to an orientation thing, which is, you know, actually kind of spooky. I mean, my mom was having fits. She said, "Oh, nobody's going to take care of you if you get sick. Nobody." I mean, she was going off on me. My dad was a carpenter. That's how he built our house. My mom worked as a seamstress. You know, what you would like a sort of like a sweatshop here, sewing swim shorts.
This is in
Waihiwa. So down Wilikina Drive is where it used to be. So they had all these power machines and whatnot. So she did that. So I guess you'd say I was basically lower middle class kind of an upbringing. But it was fun. We had no toys. We made our own slingshots. We played in the gulch. We had guava fights.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother and a younger sister. I went to Vista and got trained in what they call the Hills and Hollers of Kentucky, in a white community with a one-room schoolhouse, with outhouses, which I thought had gone out of existence after we moved
like
from
you compare, right?
Yeah. And I was going, how come they possibly in 1965 still have outhouses and still have one-room school? You read about them in books like from the 1900s, right? Why is there still a one-room schoolhouse? But this was a white community. The Appalachian Volunteers had sent me there because they were contracted to do the training. And I found out later that the community, the county, had run out their one and only black family from the county with guns and everything. They just chased them out of the county like the week before I got there, and nobody told me. And I don't look like any of them, you know. So I go in there, my hair's down to here, and I'm not even 5 feet. So I go there, and people would say, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. And I never, to this day, couldn't figure out if they were saying Hawaii because they knew I came from Hawaii, or how are you? But I had no incidents there. They were all very nice to me, but I'm, you know, with this short little thing, this pretty non-threat to me, so I guess they figured I was okay. So after training in Kentucky, in a white community, I get placed in a more urban section, a little town, in a black community. It's government. So I get there in 65, the fall of 65, and get placed with a family. I think we got $85 a month. My rent was like $15 a month. The rest I had to live off of. Okay. So my job was to my job was to work on the community center because they had just integrated that fall. I got there in November. In September they integrated the school. So this was the black schoolhouse. It was like basically one big room, a little kitchen, and I think a bathroom. And the community had gotten together and bought the building, and they were trying to make it into a community center. So my job was to help organize it, develop the library, work with the kids, and go out and solicit donations in the wider community. So that's sort of what I did. And I think that experience helped shape a lot of my opinions later. Because you grow up in Hawaii, you always get this thing, oh, we're the melting pot of Hawaii, everybody gets along and yada, yada, yada. It's, you know, it's, everybody accepts everybody. And in American society, anybody can rise. You just have to work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can make it. It's the American dream. So, you know, you hear that all your life, you believe it. So I get to Glade Spring, Virginia, in this black community, and I start to look at things a little differently. You look at Hawaii a little differently when you're away. And then you can pick up all the little discrepancies. Yeah? So in this community, there were no black men. Usually after 18, they either moved away to get a job or military. A lot of them just went into the military. And while I was there, which would have been, what was it? 60s, late 60s? No, 65, 66. Vietnam was just heating up. And while I was there, there was one resident who came back in a coffin. And so that was my first awareness of the war in Vietnam. So I came back home in 66. Oh yeah, that was the other thing was a touch of my first, kind of a graphic experience with people's attitudes towards people of another race, more so than here. Because I was in the black community, I hung out with the black kids. And because I was from here, I wasn't conscious of you don't do certain things. So one day, about 3 or 4 of the kids from the community and one of the white girls from Emory and Henry College, we've gone to a carnival and we're coming back and it's cold because it's like winter time. And so I was thinking, oh, I'm so cold, I want hot cocoa, you know, and the kids go, oh yeah, we want hot cocoa. So we're driving back, I think we're in Abingdon, just before we get to Glade Spring, and I see a restaurant. So I pull in the parking lot, park the car, dead silence. The kids go, oh, we're not cold, we don't want any cocoa. I said, what do you mean you don't want any cocoa? You were just telling me how cold you were. I'm cold, let's go. So I made however many of us, I made everybody get out of the car. And the restaurant was situated where you come in the door here and there's tables along the way and there's this long corridor and there were like 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 of us. So these were like 4 people, so we needed to get a bigger table. So the only one that would fit was at the very end, right? It was a little round table. I still remember it. So I make them go. I said, go. And then we go there and then we sit down and I turn around and look. Every single head in that restaurant was like looking at us, you know? And I thought, well, see, I've been stared at the whole time I was in Kentucky and in Virginia. Kids would follow me around trying to figure out what I was because they hadn't ever seen anybody like me. So I just chalked it up to, okay, they've never seen an Asian person. So they were staring at me. We sat there and we waited and we waited and we waited and we waited. I go, oh man, that service is really junk. But finally, because I guess we were mostly kids, they came, they took our order, we drank our cocoa, and we left. We paid and we left. And on our way back to Glade Spring, the kids say, they don't serve black people in there. And I went, what? What do you mean they don't serve black people in there? Yeah, they don't serve black people in that restaurant. Not even the white girl told me anything. I mean, they were all from there. Nobody told me anything. But
there was no sign that said no colors allowed.
Well, see,
it was just
it was illegal, right, at that point. But it was like understood in the community, you don't go there. And of course, nobody told me, right?
Let's make America great again, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I would do kind of stupid stuff like that out of ignorance, not knowing how things are. So anyway, so I learned a little bit more. And then I came back here. And I just had a hard time readjusting to here because it was a totally different environment again. It was alien. I was looking at Hawaii differently than when I was going up here. And of course my mom, who was this really strong-willed kind of person, felt like she had to get me under her thumb again. So, you know, I have a 12 o'clock curfew if I go out. My sister, who's 4 years younger, can come in later. And I'm going, you know, that doesn't compute. That doesn't work. So I reapplied to UH and I think, okay, at this point, I kind of have a goal to go into social work. So I would go into sociology. And so I was a little more motivated to go to college at this point. But it got to be a little uncomfortable at home, so I moved out. Then I got a job at Cafe Flamingo and worked like 48 hours a week and went to school full time. Barely passed that semester because I was so stretched. So it was sort of like learning from putting all the experiences together and kind of developing a different world view. So then I went to UH, went to work, went to UH, went to work. Met Cole, because I was dating him, and then the resistance got started. So I guess I'd been to a couple of rallies, but it was still very limited because my time was, a lot of it, I worked like 11:30 to 8, and my classes were in the morning, so it was like jam-packed. When the Bachman House sit-in happened, I had met John by that time. In fact, Cole introduced me to John. When Bachman House happened, I was still working. So after work, I would drive to UH, and to get into the building, because it's all locked up by then, I had to climb the wall and get over onto the roof. And I went, recently we were down there, and I was looking at, how could I possibly have done that? Because there was an overhang, and that's what I remember, climbing up the wall that had holes in it, and then gripping it and then going over. I could never do that now. I can't even do a back bend now, but you know. But that's what I did, and that's how I got in.
Was this the Oliver Lee?
The Oliver Lee Bachman House sit-in 1968, May. So I would just go running back and forth and whatnot. And so when the arrest came, I was there, and I got arrested. And I think Kaleo had a big picture of me going into the paddy wagon. My parents were scandalized. It was like, ah! My mom would call me and say, you know, you're causing your father to have a heart attack. Or I got blamed for all the ailments in the whole family, and people were calling them saying what a terrible person I was, and how could you let your daughter do this? And my dad was saying, I can't control that, right? So that was my very first arrest. Actually, I haven't been arrested that many times.
So how did you? I'm sorry, I missed that. How did you get involved in that? Through Cole and through John?
I met Cole, and then we started getting involved in the resistance movement, the draft, anti-war, and that came from my Virginia experience. I mean, that sowed the seeds to why, okay, you know, before that you just sort of ignored what's going on in the wider world. But because of that, I came back and I started looking at it differently. And as the resistance movement grew and we got more information and we got to talk to GIs and stuff, it was just wrong. They would have all these meetings of what to do, demonstrations, peace marches, all of this stuff. And a lot of it was supported by people like John and Iko Reineke, Betty and Walter Johnson, and then there was also the case of Chen Yushi, who was East West Center student who got arrested when he went back. And John got very involved in that because he was an East West Center grantee. So through all of those different causes, you just make decisions as to what you're going to stand up for and what you can do. And so I never felt like we could do enough, or at least I never felt I could do enough. And I always felt like, you know, you're just one person, what can you do? But then if you're yelling with a whole lot of people, you feel like, okay, well, maybe our voices might be loud enough, but you never know. Well, there was this whole big thing about the year 2000 and how, I guess, I'm not sure if nationally or what, they were doing all of these plans and what will the year 2000 look like, kind of. And so, since I wasn't all that old yet, it was like, okay, we're the ones who are going to be around in the year 2000. We should have some kind of say as to what it's going to look like. So I think it was Youth Action at that point, and John was the volunteer coordinator for Youth Action.
And Youth Action was a local group? Or?
Yeah, John started it as kind of a funding arm to fund youth projects.
Youth projects.
And so I think they got money from the legislature to do a youth congress. And I just remember two, one at university and one on Molokai, both of which we've gone to. And a lot of it, I mean, the range of participants was very broad, from anti-war people to Boy Scouts. You know, it's just whoever was going to be around in the year 2000, you have a stake in this, so, you know, come to this conference. And there were some pretty far out ideas, I guess you would say, secede from the Union. There was a growing sense of being a colony, and, you know, this feeling of being a colonized people. So, and I think that's also where some of the Kokua Kalama decision-making came around, because from resistance days, they were saying, oh, these outside Hale agitators are coming in, and, you know, like you see Cole burning his draft card, and they're stirring up all our good local kids into acting like them kind of stuff. It's like the local kids had no brain of their own. They had no commitment of their own. It's only because these outside agitators are coming in and telling them what to do that they're acting like this, you know. So I think that was also part of the root of the Kalama decision. So there were splinter groups from there. Then there was, what was it? HRO, RU, RCP, Kaimuki House.
What was the HRO? Was the
Hawaii Revolutionary Organization.
Can you talk a little about that?
I wasn't
you didn't know.
involved
Okay.
in it very much, because I thought all they do is sit around and talk about philosophy, and I don't do well at meetings, you know. You go to a meeting, you have an agenda, you do it, and then you get out and do whatever you said you were going to do with the thing. You don't sit around and, to me, belly gaze and study philosophy and what was it? What was the term I always would say? Practice and theory and practice. They would sit around and study theory. I go, what about the practice? You know, you're sitting around spending hours and hours and hours discussing what Mao said and what Zhou Enlai said and what da-da-da-da-da, and then what are you doing? You're tired, you go to sleep, you don't do anything. And
So some of the groups were like HRO, was RCP, RU,
Yeah, RU.
WBO, or
There's a whole, kind of a progression of different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other, there were different kinds of groups who were organizing as well. Like there were military, there were the anti-war military as well. There were some women's groups were forming.
SDS.
Yeah, SDS was, John helped form SDS when he was at East West Center, so that would have been in '68. So all of these things kind of like are like little seedlings, yeah, going up all over the different place. And some got bigger, some didn't. So I'm trying to think what else I'm remembering. Then what did we do? John and I got married in September of '69. And part of the reason was we did want to have children, because if you're fighting for a better society, who are you fighting for a better society for? You know, I mean, we're not going to be around forever, and we did want to have kids. And it was hard enough being political and getting criticized left and right for that without having children at that time anyway, out of wedlock, and subjecting them to further criticism. So it was like, okay, this is the route we're going to take. There were some people who said, you shouldn't get married, da, 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 da. And it really was different. Before we were married, people would ask me what my opinion was. As soon as we got married, what does John think? I go, what do you mean, what does John think?
Interesting.
It was like, it was very clear to me in terms of attitudes towards women. So I would not talk to those people. So until they asked me what I thought. But we did all kinds of different things, trying to be, trying to do educational things. We had there was a women's union at one point where we went into prisons because a lot of women were in prison at that point. We did Mayday dancers, which was to use art and culture as a form of educating.
I remember seeing a picture of you dancing.
Yeah, we did. We performed at Chinatown. We did Ala Park. We did songs like "What Did You Learn in School Today," and we would change the words. I can't even remember. I learned that Washington never told a lie. I learned that somebody never cried. I forget. Oh, big boy. Anyway, we did it all in a dance form, and it was fun. The kids were little. I had Matthew and Leah by then, because Leah was born in '73. Matthew was born like 2 days before they got arrested at Kalama Valley. So when John and Laurie and Linton went out there that July 1st or 2nd, I had just come home because Matthew was born on June 28th. So I was home with a newborn baby, trying to nurse him, trying to figure out how to raise this kid. And I get a call, and I think it was from Nancy Park, who told me that Linton and Laurie and John just got arrested. Well, okay. When will they be home? I mean, I couldn't do anything about it, right? I mean, they got arrested. They must have had a good reason to get arrested, and I'm sure I'll hear about it later. And I did. So then, I guess this was sort of like something that was in the making for a while, and this was an action that helped mobilize more and more people. And then as it went on and it became Kokua Kalama was the first formation, and then later on into Kokua Hawaii, because the first focus was Kalama Valley. And then when the organization wanted to broaden its scope, it became Kokua Hawaii. So it didn't stay Kokua Kalama that long as I remember. And because I had a baby, I was excused from a lot of the physical actions. And so when the arrest came in May, I was still home with Matthew, and I was designated outside communications person, whatever that was. I mean, I was just sitting by the phone. And I guess I just relayed information to whoever wanted to know whatever. But after that, there were endless meetings, strategies of what we're going to do.
Did you formally join Kokua Hawaii, or you just kind of morphed into it?
I was just part of it, just because I was there, I guess. I don't know. There was no membership papers or anything. You just attended meetings or participated, but you're just sort of part of it. And I was involved with typesetting and producing the Huli, and later on Ho'ana and various newspapers. I guess I sort of morphed into, when I went to work for the newspaper, it wasn't like a membership thing, you just were part of it. But again, I just don't like meeting endlessly. I will do stuff. I would tell them, tell me what to do, what signs you want painted, or what food you need cooked. I did go to some meetings, but I still never had much patience for long meetings. So when I was at the newspaper, I got involved with the union, and I was on the board. So eventually, those meetings were endless too. They would go on for an hour, 2 hours. No, they would never go on for an hour. They'd go on for like 2 or 3 hours, and people would leave. You know, I gotta go somewhere. So finally, ran for president. So I was president of the guild, and I said, okay, we have an agenda. You'll be out of here in an hour. And I just ran the meeting. It's an hour. People started coming to meetings. We never could meet a quorum because they would go on forever, right? So I got involved in the union. And I worked at, it was the Hawaii Newspaper Agency. And then back in 2000, they were trying to close the Star Bulletin. And so we were on a cruise. John and I were on our what was it? Our 30th anniversary. And we come back and we find out that they're closing the Star Bulletin. So I'm going, okay, what can we do, right? John says, John, of course, the eternal optimist, says, you can stop that. I'm going, yeah, right, how? And so that started the Save Our Star Bulletin movement, which a lot of people got involved in. A.Q. McElrath, I can't even remember. So many people, so many community people got involved in it and started, we started holding picket lines and whatnot. And so eventually the bulletin got bought by Black.
I understand that you were arrested also in Kalama Valley. Is that right?
Nope.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
I remember I was outside communication person because I had Matthew.
Okay. So how else were you involved in Kalama Valley? Well, what exactly things that you
I did go to meetings. Meetings.
Describe the meetings.
Endless.
What did he talk about? Do you remember any individuals that were kind of pronounced in these meetings?
There was all that discussion about the haoles and all of that. Mm-hmm. So there was that discussion.
What exactly was that about? Yeah.
About how it was, I guess, and I don't remember who said what, but it was this whole idea that the perception that the larger public was getting is that it was, because there's haoles involved, it must be them who are directing and organizing and leading. And so to get away from that perception, there was that move to not, because we've learned that from the resistance anti-war stuff, it was like all of these outside people making our good local people behave the way they did. And so this was more as much of an effort to dispel that and say, no, this is a locally led movement. We're not being led around by whatever white person there is, and we can think for ourselves. We are, some of us might have a bit of a colonized mentality, but we're breaking out of that. This is
the process, right?
Yeah, it is a process. It was sort of like having to be away from here to look back and look at things differently and change your perspective. And so people were doing that. Of course, I won't say that there weren't opportunists on either side. I mean, in terms of, there's some people who are Hawaiian who use that to either make an argument or win an argument, because I had some people like that at work. And I'm going, where were you in the Kalama Valley struggle? Just as there are always blacks or whites who use stuff, their opportunities.
So capital, because
Yeah. So, yeah, there was struggle going on, and of course, being married to John, it was like, oh, you're just brainwashed by the whites or whatever. I'm like, okay, think what you like, I don't care. But we had a lot of struggle over that. There was a lot of struggle over the men, the chauvinism of the men, their attitudes towards childcare, because by that time there were more children in the group, and the men always thought of certain things as women's work. And so there was a lot of struggle there. And we won some, we lost some. But it's as you say, it's a progression. You 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You learn something, you forget it, and you learn it again. Eventually, we get to a better place, I hope. Moira Foley was a nurse, and I'm not sure how she got involved, but I remember her at some meetings. She might have been involved with John Furman at that point, but she came and helped with, physical ailments because she was a nurse. And she was pretty outspoken about some of the attitudes that the men had towards the women. And that really was more like versus men's work. And some of that, not that the Kokua Hawaii people were all resistance people, but in the resistance, that was some of the attitude that came through. With, we're the ones that are draft resistors, and we're the ones that are going to go to jail, and then to wait for us. That kind of the separation of roles was as pronounced, I would say, in Kokua Hawaii as it would have been anywhere else in that culture at that time. And I know there are times that John would just be telling me, I should be more out front. I'm a woman, I'm local, I should be out as a spokesperson, etc., etc. And that he would get criticized saying that you're holding Lucy back, you're not letting her do whatever. And I'm going, yeah, right. If I had to do something, I would do it. But as a whole, I don't like to do stuff like that. Like Lori is like, I'd rather just do the background work. But when I had to, like when I was involved with the union and I was president, I had to speak to hundreds of people or serve as international VP on the international board. And I had to speak, you do it. You do what you gotta do. But my preference is to kind of fly under the radar because I feel like I can do more that way and get more work done without interference. That was my attitude anyway. As far as the chauvinism goes, there were guys who were slapping around women. They get into a fight and so we would challenge them, and sometimes it helped and sometimes it didn't help a whole lot. Treating women as property, like if a woman was involved with one person and was attracted to another, she might get beat up or the guy might get beat up, or it's like, but she should have a say in what she chooses to do. It's not like you have control over what she does. So there was those kinds of issues, and I think it reflected the culture at large, because that was also not so much the property, but the male-female roles. That was pretty much the culture at that time. I have to put in a word for Najo Yoshinaga at this point, because my dad and my mom were all upset about my anti-war stuff. They were not happy with my Kokua Hawaii work, but especially the anti-war stuff, because my brother was a captain in the army, and he was in Vietnam at the time we were protesting the war. And so I would get a lot of flack about how I'm jeopardizing his security clearance, I'm creating all kinds of problems for him in the military. And so my answer to that was, they need to judge him on him, not on who he's related to, because I'm not influencing him. I have a right to my own opinion and my own actions. So that was my position. That was it. I mean, I just stuck to it. However, my dad used to go throw net fishing in Eva, and he ran into Nadao Yoshinaga, who was a state senator at the time. And they knew each other, I guess, from Waipahu days or something. So, of course, my dad's at the beach there complaining about his wayward daughter. And Senator Yoshinaga complains about his daughter because she was, I guess, involved in similar kinds of things. But then he tells my dad, but you know, they're right. And so for my dad, I think, I always saw this as kind of a turning point in his attitude that, oh, there's some legitimacy to this, you know, that maybe he needs to listen. And in later years, he always said, yeah, he disagreed, but ultimately it turned out that we were right, you know. And I think some of his whole attitude towards life is kind of what's rubbed off on me. And fair is fair, right? You're going to stand up for what's right, whether you are the littlest person or not. You're going to fight for that. And so, see, he didn't like it when he would say, why are you doing this, guy? I said, because that's what you taught me to do. And I said, it's wrong. It's just wrong. And you taught me to stand up for what is right, regardless. And so he kind of like, he had to tone it down a little bit, even if he didn't like it, because that was true. That's what he taught us. You fight for what is right and fair. And there were a number of instances growing up and in my adult life that I go back to my upbringing, and that was his attitude. So it's not his fault.
Besides Moira, were there any other women who were like, you know, helped out with this whole question?
I'm trying to remember who the women were. I know Jimmy Ng's wife. And a lot of the kids there were part of the children's collective that we formed to help take care of kids. And then there were some guys who signed up for shifts with that. It wasn't all day, but it gave parents some freedom. So, of course, not enough men signed up for it. Even the fathers but you did have volunteers like Charlie Brockman who didn't have kids. He was very active in the peace movement, and he died a number of years ago. But a really good guy. There were a lot of people who were supportive, but they weren't really. They couldn't come out there because they were not able to. So we felt a lot of sympathy, but not a physical presence from a lot of people.
So this house here actually was really a kind of like a central station, you know, of a lot of things.
A lot of people came through here.
Meetings, people just coming here, and can you kind of sum up some of the things?
They would meet and talk and talk and talk. I remember once there was a meeting here. I don't remember what group it was, but there were, and you know, some of the people could talk a lot and long. And so I had kids to put to sleep. Sometimes I had to go to work the next day. And so when it got to be a certain time, I would look at them and say, okay, you guys got to go home now. He would be just so embarrassed. He'd say, oh, you have to, I said, they got to go. You know?
John, don't get embarrassed.
John, he would say, oh, you know, everybody thinks I'm such a witch, right? I said, hey, they should know me better by now. I said, you come here, you're welcome to the meeting, but there is a curfew. Go home. But yeah, there were a lot of meetings here.
Because I remember I met first time John and Aiko Reneke. Any thoughts about them? You know?
I was involved in the effort to get them recognized and get some restitution, because they were fired during the communist witch hunts, and Aiko just for being married to John. You know, so he was such a soft-spoken, gentle person, you know. And anyway, we felt that was such an injustice, so we got involved in the struggle to get them. Well, they were retired at that point. They wouldn't teach again, but get them some kind of compensation. And so I remember going down to the legislature, and people who had initially been, very supportive, yeah, they should do this and that. When it came down to push come to shove, they weren't always there, but we forged ahead and finally were able to get them a settlement. And it's just, I think that was one of my legislative lessons, that you don't always believe what a politician tells you, because they might say one thing one day, but the next day they are totally in another corner, unless there's some way you can make them do what they say they were going to do. So I try not to be cynical about people like that, but there's enough examples that it's disappointing, that there is not as much integrity as you would like to see in our leadership. I mean, they finally came through, and at least Aiko and John were able to have a more comfortable retirement. But the things that were done to them, it was just unconscionable. So that was one of the battles that I feel really good about, that something good came out of it. And they were always, no matter what, supportive of all the efforts.
Can you describe what you currently are doing now politically?
I haven't really done a whole lot since my most activity I did was when I was still working, and I was with the union, the newspaper guild. And
are you still a member of them? No.
It's pretty much when that, I was already retired when they killed the advertiser, and Black took over and created the Star Advertiser. And then the unit here kind of got diminished greatly. So there's not a separate local here like there used to be. They're attached to a California local of the Newspaper Guild, CWA.
Can you summarize what you feel is the importance or significance of the Kalama Valley struggle?
I think it was, if not the beginning, it was a culmination of people learning about themselves, learning about what we have the power to do, and that it helped spur other struggles, because there were connections made with Chinatown, with Third Arm, with Ota Camp, with Waihoi Waikane, with New Malo Nawili, on Kauai. I mean, people, it was sort of like the Star Bulletin thing. I was like, oh, what can you do to stop closing a paper, right? I said, you don't know until you try. And we went into it having no clue as to whether we were going to be successful or not, and sort of like taking from our past organizing experiences and calling together people that we thought would be interested and going from there, To me, what Kalama did was empower people to see, yeah, you can do something. You're not going to always win the war, but you could win battles here and there, and you could raise consciousness of people to know that they can, however little they might think it is, they can make a little bit of a difference, and other people can build from that. It's not in a vacuum. You're all connected, and that we learn from each other, and it's a constant learning process. I mean, even now I'm always learning something new. When I substitute teach, I go to class, I say, okay, what new thing am I going to learn today? And I always learn something new, either from the kids or from something they're learning. And to me, that's part of constantly developing yourself, but also teaching the kids that school is not just school. You don't only learn in school. That learning is a lifelong thing, that you learn different things, you learn different skills, and you always try to be a better person for what you learn. You know, it's anyway, that's my attitude.
Okay. So, last question. What ideally do you envision this world for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren? What would you like to see?
I really would like to see a society where healthcare, housing, food is not a privilege, but it is a right. You know, that people deserve to have decent clothing, decent housing, and medical care.
Education.
Education. All of those things that you have access to, because all of those things make for a better society, period. If you have a population that's starving, if you have a population that's dying of whatever diseases, it diminishes that society overall. Yeah, you might still have your rich people, and they might be okay, but they might not. Because to me, at some point, the way this country is going, there's going to be revolt. When people have nothing to lose but their lives, what do? You know, you take away their health care, they're dying anyway, you don't give them access to food, housing, everything. They've got nothing to lose. And the way the balance is, the more imbalance there is, even if they're in their fortified housing fortresses, there's going to be rebellion. And I don't understand why the so-called 1% can't see that. They would only get richer if everybody has something to spend. If you have nothing to spend, you're not going to contribute to the economy. I mean, I'm not an economist, but it makes no sense to me that these people who have so much need to get more. What are you going to do with all that money? It's crazy.
So do you think that there actually is going to be very soon maybe a rebellion, a revolution or something? Would you like to see that happen? Or
no, I would not like to see that happen, because I think a lot of people will suffer and be hurt.
Be hurt?
And I don't know, there's so many other countries that are good examples of how you can support a society in a good way. You know, you can take care of your trash, not throw your plastics in the ocean. You can take care of people's health. You can take care of people's physical needs. I mean, there are countries that have those examples.
Talk about like Scandinavia.
Yeah. Yes, they have a higher tax rate, but I'd rather pay a higher tax rate and have a go to taking care of people rather than bombing Syria.
But we are paying a pretty high tax. When you talk about inflation and all that stuff.
No, we're paying a lot, but I'd much rather see my tax dollars go to taking care of people than to funding Trump's Mar-a-Lago golfing expeditions, you know. I'd much rather my tax dollars feed somebody, house somebody, give them health care.
Briefly.
You said last question.
I know he lied.
You say so many last questions.
Briefly, real briefly, are you optimistic about the future, and why?
Well, the thing is, I always try to be optimistic because pessimism is so negative, and my optimism is because I have a lot of hope in the young people. I mean, us old fogies are kind of still there. We're supportive, but it's the energy and the intelligence and the strength of the young who are going to save us, really. So, yeah, I like to be optimistic. Because, like you said, you know, back then, when everything seemed so negative, I said, we do what we do to try and create a better world. for the ones who are coming after us. And so that's what they do too. So my hope is in the young people of today and the dinosaurs like us who support them. See, I cannot run as fast as I used to, so I cannot stand and hold signs as long as I used to, so they gotta shore me up. These kids said they're carrying me. They're gonna take care of me when I'm old and decrepit. They said.
That's what they say.
We'll see.